Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Today we are starting on a brand new topic or chapter, and it is all about something called systems of equation. So to start with that topic, we're going to start with 4-1, and before that, we're going to do some reviews on how to graph in slope-intercept form. So let's do that first. Well, in the review section, something that you have to know before starting a lesson is knowing how to graph in slope-intercept form. So let's take a look at these three examples. In example 1, the slope-intercept form is y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4. And recall that in the slope-intercept form, you have to first identify the slope and the y-intercept. So in the y-intercept, the y-intercept is the last number, and the slope is the first number that is in front of the x. So for slope, the value of the slope in this slope-intercept form is going to be negative 2/3. And it's really up to you whether to put the negative on the numerator or denominator. Well, let's say if I were to put it on the numerator, negative 2/3, right? Well, then this negative 2 will be going down 2 units, and this 3 will go into the right since the 3 is positive and the 2 is negative. And then the y-intercept is the last number, the constant in the equation, which is positive 4. Okay, so to graph this, we always start with the y-intercept, which is at 4. So on the y-axis, you're going to start from the origin, and you go up 4 units, and you put a dot there like this. And then after that, you follow the slopes, the direction of the slope, which is 2 units down and 3 units right. So it starts at this point, and you go 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, and then you put a dot right there. And then from there, you're pretty much done. The last thing you have to do is use a ruler to connect the 2 dots. And to check whether your answer is correct is very easy. Look at the slope, right? The value of the slope is negative, and I see that this graph is going from left to right. It is going downhill. So the slopes, the direction of the slope matches the sign of the slope value. And then since the y-intercept is at 4, positive 4, I see that I start at the 4 on the y-axis. The line intersects the y-axis at 4. So that's how you could check that the graph matches the equation that is given to you. Let's try another example. In example 2, you have y equals 2x minus 1. So same thing, you're going to identify the slope and the y-intercepts. Well, in this case, the slope, it's going to be the number in front of the x, which is 2. But then I have to make it as a fraction. So 2, I could make it as 2 over 1. Well, since the 2 on the numerator is positive, this time it's going upwards. And then the 1 on the denominator is also positive, so it's 1 to the right. And then the y-intercept is the last number, the constant at the end of the equation, which in this case is negative 1. So same thing, to start graphing it, I first will start on the origin and move 1 unit down the y-axis. You put a dot. And then from there, you follow the directions, which is 2 up and 1 right. So start here, you go 1, 2 up, and then 1 right. And you repeat that again. You go 1, 2 up, and then 1 right. And then at the end, you're going to use a ruler and connect these 3 dots that are on the same line, like this. So likewise, to check that your answer is correct, you look at the slope. The slope value is positive. I see that from left to right, the line is going up, which is a positive slope. And then it also intersects the y-intercept at negative 1. So look at the line and the y-axis. They both intersect at negative 1. Well, at the end of example 3, I see that this equation is a little bit short. It says y equals 5, and there's no x's, it's only a constant. So this tells you, as a recall, it's a horizontal line. So if it's a horizontal line, all you have to do is on the y-axis, find the value 5, because it says 5 right here. Find the value 5, which is right here. And then at the end, you just have to draw a horizontal line through the dot that you just drew. So this is a horizontal line, passes through the value 5 on the y-axis, and that is the equation for y equals 5. Well, that's all for the review on how to graph in slope-intercept form. Let's move on to our brand new lesson. Well, today's lesson is going to be 4-1, Systems of Equations by Graphing. Well, let's talk about what is a systems of equations first. Now, before I give you the definition, here's a visual representation. Well, back in the days when you solve an equation, I give you an equation with one variable, which is just usually x, And then you're going to, do something on both sides, and at the end you get x equals 1. And we have been doing equations for the last couple chapters since middle school, since the beginning of high school. So you have been seeing equations your whole life. Well, in systems of equations, it's very similar, but instead of one equation, I give you two equations. And instead of one letters or one variables, I give you two letters, x and y. So in this case, you have to give me two answers, the value of the x and the value of the y. You notice that in an equation, there's usually one letter, one answer. But in the systems of equations, you have two letters, two answers. And of course, if you move on to high-level math, you're going to have three equations, three answers, four equations, four answers, so on and so forth. But at this level, we're going to concentrate on just two equations, two letters, and two answers. And if you notice that, well, since x has a number and y has a number as the answer, we could write it as an order pair with x comes first before the y, right? And we're going to practice writing this in this lesson. So this is a representation, a visual representation of systems of equations. But what is a systems of equations? Well, it is a set of equations with specific number of variables, and your goal is to solve for the values of all the variables given to you. Okay, so if there are two letters, you have to find two answers. And if there's three letters in the future, you have to find all three answers. But again, at this level, we're going to find two answers only. Okay, well, how do you check if an order pair is the correct solution to the systems of equations? So in other words, how do you know that 1, 2 is the correct answer for these two equations? So we're going to learn how to do that. So first, we're going to write the equation y equals negative 2x plus 4. And since I know that y is 2 and x is 1, we're going to substitute y with the value 2. And then substitute the x with the value 1. And then you write the remaining part, which is plus 4. And your goal is to check whether the left side is equal to the right side. So we're going to use order of operations. We're going to multiply negative 2 times 1, which is negative 2 plus 4. Well, negative 2 plus 4, it is 2. So 2 equals 2. So that works. Well, let's actually plug in the same set of answers into the other equation, which is y is equal to x plus 1. Well, let's replace the y again with 2. And then equals. Let's replace the x with 1. And then write the remaining part of the equation. And then after that, do you agree that 1 plus 1 equals 2? Yes. So 2 equals 2, that works. So to check that whether your answer is correct to the problem, you have to plug in your answers to both of the equations and check to see if the left side equals to the right side. And you have to do it twice. The first time on the first equation, check it. And then the second time onto the second equation, check it. And if both of them make sense, they're equal to each other, then your answer is correct. If one of them fails, then of course these answers are not correct and you have to go back and check. Okay? So now next, let's move on to how do you actually find these answers now, okay? So let's do that. Well, in example 1, we are going to take a look at how do you find the answers to these two equations, y equals negative 2x plus 4 and y equals x plus 1. And since the title of this lesson is all about graphing, we're going to graph these two lines on the coordinate plane. So this is a very good review on how do you plot things in slope-intercept form. Well, let's take a look at this, the first equation. I know that the slope is going to be negative 2 over 1 because the number in front of the x is negative 2. So you're going to write negative 2 over 1. And then the y-intercept is positive 4. So to do that, you're going to plot the y-intercept first, right, at positive 4 because it's positive 4. And then after that, you are going to follow the slope direction. So in this case, since the 2 is negative and is on the numerator, then it's 2 units down. And then since the numerator value is positive, then it's to the right. So it's 2 down, 1 right. So that means starting from here, you go move 2 down and 1 right. You put a dot. And for this specific lesson, I want you to keep continuing plotting more dots until you cover up the entire graph. So you don't stop here. You continue. Move 2 down, 1 right. Keep going, 2 down, 1 right. Keep going, 2 down, 1 right. Like this. You continue doing that until you cover the entire XY plane, right? And I'll tell you why later. So once you plot these 5 dots, I want you to connect them very, very briefly. You don't have to draw too deep into it. just like this, right? So that you know that you graph the first line. Well, on the second equation, y equals x plus 1, I kind of previously did these for you. Well, the slope is going to be the number in front of the x, which is 1, and then the y-intercept is going to be the number, the constant behind the equation, which is 1 as well. Well, for the slope of 1, I have to make it as a fraction. So it's going to be 1 up, 1 right. So to graph this equation, I'm going to start on the y-intercept at 1 first. Okay, positive 1. So on the y-axis, you're going to go up 1 unit like this. And then from there, you go 1 up, 1 right. And you're going to continue that pattern. 1 up, 1 right, put a dot. 1 up, 1 right, put a dot. 1 up, 1 right, put a dot. And you notice that there is a point that is dotted twice right there, right? So let's connect this first. But again, you notice that there's one dot that is plotted twice, intersected by both lines, which is this dot. Well, this intersection right here is your answer. So you're going to tell me what is the x value here, which is 1. What is the y value here, which is 2, right? So that means your answer is going to be 1, 2. So when you write your answer, you're going to write 1, 2 like this. Okay, and then that's your answer to this systems of equations. That means the value of x is 1 and the value of y is 2. Isn't that great? You're able to find 2 answers now at the same time by doing just one problem. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Example 2. In this case, you have y equals 1/3 x minus 2 and y equals negative 4/3 x plus 3. Now, don't get too worried about the fractions because the way that we do it is the same thing, and it's actually easier, by the way. So the slope in this case is going to be the number in front of the fraction, which is 1/3, and then the y-intercept is negative 2. Let's talk about the slope first. Since the 1 on the numerator is positive, it's going to be 1 up, and the 3 on the denominator is also positive, so it's going to be 3 to the right. So you're going to start on the xy planes at y-intercept, which is negative 2. Okay, and then after that you go 1 up, 3 right. So 1 up, 3 right, you put a dot, and you go 1 up, 3 right. You're like, oh, I'm running out of space, so you don't have to do that anymore. Now on the other hand, instead of going 1 up, 3 right, you go 1 down, 3 left, and it will still give you a point that is on the same line. I have to connect it first, right? Connect these 3 dots on the same line like this. Well, the next graph is y equals negative 4/3 x plus 3. So same thing. You're going to find the slope, which is negative 4/3, and then the y-intercept, which is 3. Well, in this case, the slope, the numerator is negative, so it's going to be negative 4 units down. And then the 3 is going to be 3 units to the right. Okay, so you're going to start on the y-intercept first at 3 like this. You're going to plot a point. Let me use a different color pen, right? In this case, red. I'm going to start at positive 3 on the y-axis. And then from there, you move 4 down and 3 to the right. So you move 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4. And 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3 like this. And again, you notice that, hey, this dot got plotted twice. So therefore, this is your answer, but I still have to draw the line first, okay? Well, the solution of this system will be right here, which the x value is 3 and the y value is negative 1. So we're gonna just put an arrow and say the answer is gonna be 3, negative 1. And that's your solution right there. That means x equals 3 and y equals negative 1. Well, to check whether your answer is correct, you simply replace the x value with the x that you found, which is 3, and replace the y value, replace the y with the y value of negative 1 that you found. And you're going to do this to both equations and make sure that the left side equals to the right side. It might be a little bit tedious since you have fractions in this problem, but the process will be the same. So I'm pretty sure some of you probably going to ask this question. What if 2 lines on the graph do not intersect at one point? I mean, so far we have looked at all the lines that intersect, but what happens if they don't intersect? What are you going to do? Well, let's take a look at 3 possible cases. Well, when you solve in systems of equations by graphing, you're going to run into one of these 3 cases. Well, the most common one is when 2 lines are intersecting. And in this case, in this particular example, it intersects at this point. And if they both intersect, that means you got one solution, right? That means there's one answer. And in this case, of course, the solution just for this particular graph is 1, 1 because the x value is 1 right here and the y value is 1 right here. So it's 1, 1. But what happens when two lines do not intersect, which is right here? Well, if they don't intersect, that means there's no answers. You only find answers when they intersect. If they don't intersect, if they're parallel to each other, then you have something called no solutions. That means you cannot find what x equals to, and you cannot find what y equals to. Okay? And on the last example, what happened if two lines, they both overlapping each other? Not only they're parallel, but they're on top of each other. Well, if that's the case, that means they intersect everywhere. They intersect at infinitely many places because they're always touching. So if that's the case, you don't really have a particular x and y, but you have all the x and y's that you want. So we're going to say this is infinitely many solutions. So you have one of these three cases. Most commonly, it's going to be one solution, and occasionally you're going to have no solution, and as well as infinitely many solutions, which is very similar, or actually the same as the three scenarios when you just solve an equations back in the days. Well, before I end this lesson, I want to give you a hint on the problem number 11 and number 12 on your Pearson homework. And this is actually a shortcut that you could use without actually calculating some stuff, right? So on problem 11 and 12 on the homework, it will ask you to graph these two equations, c equals 35 and c equals 4n plus 11. And of course, if the c and n kind of confuses you, you could use x and y instead. And from there, you graph these two equations on the xy plane. Now recall that y equals 35, since there's no slope, it's just a constant, it is a horizontal line. So I'm just going to make a note that this is horizontal line. Okay. And if there's a horizontal line, that means the slope is going to be 0, right? So that means on the xy plane, you're going to find 35 on the y-axis. And then from there, you're going to draw a horizontal line through the value 35 on the y-axis, right? So this is 35 because it's right in between 30 and 40. And then y equals 4x plus 11. Well, in this case, the slope is 4, and I know that the value is positive. Now, of course, I'm not going to draw what's 4x plus 11 technically, but you know it's a positive slope. So I'm just going to randomly just sketch it, right? Like this is about 11, and I know it's a little bit positive, so I'm just going to sketch it like this. So all you have to do is, since the homework is multiple choice for this particular part, all you have to do is find the correct shape of graph that has a horizontal slope and a positive slope, and that would be your answer for the first part. Now for the second part, you do have to, use the graph and then find how many hours, and by looking at the x-axis. Okay, and that's pretty much the end of the lessons. The next couple minutes will remind you how do you log into your Pearson's homework and get help. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, so to get to your homework, first you go to my CNUSD website and then you click on the top of the page, my CNUSD, to log in. Well, you're going to type in your username and your password. Well, in this case, your student ID and your password. Then you go on to resource. I think for you guys it's resource. And then you go to a place called Pearson Savas Easy. Pearson Savas Easy. I'm not quite sure how you say that word, but it's Pearson Easy. Click on that. And you get to this pop-up page. And you're going to click on your class textbook. So you click on this right here. This is called Envision Integrated Mathematics 1 2009 Common Core. You click on that, a new window pop up again, and you see 3 different colors. The green color is your online textbooks. I teach from this textbooks. So if you don't have a copy, an actual copy, you could always go to here and click on the appropriate sections that we're teaching. But to find your online homework, you look at the reddish, orangish box in between, in the middle. It's called classes. So you're going to click on here, click on classes. And depending on which period you're in, there will be new assignments here. So you're going to click on click into the assignments and then do your homework, and then that's it. Well, inside the homework, there are problems for you to work on, which allow you 3 attempts before they give you the final answer. So for example, for this problem, if you accidentally got a wrong answer, it'll tell you keep trying. Then you type in another answer, and if it's wrong, then it'll give you one more chance. And the third time that you got it wrong, it'll tell you the answer right away. So, but you could always get help by viewing an example on this part of the feature. So it'll tell you what to do step by step, step by step, step by step until the final answer. So you could always refer to the question, help view an example, or you could use help me to solve this to actually work it step by step. So there will be more answer boxes for you to fill in, but at least it will help you on your learning. Now, for this problem, what do you do when you get it wrong, right? So, well, to get a point or to get scores on that homework, then you click on similar questions and you keep practicing until you get it right. So if I were to click on similar questions, you notice that the questions changed. It's different from the previous one. So let's say this time you got it right. Let's say x is equal to 5, right? Well, if you got it right, it will tell you well done, okay, and then you move on to the next problem. So you click on next to move on to the next problem, like this. And once you finish all the problem, I believe the next thing is for you to make sure that you answer all the questions. If there's anything that it's not answered, make sure that you go back and look at it like this, right? So this is not answered. But let's say assume that if you finish your all of the questions on your homework, then you go to the bottom, I believe. Oh, actually, this button right here says submit my work. So you click on it and then boom, I only got 3% just because I only answered one question correct, the rest I did not answer. So in order for you to get at least 80% or any good scores, make sure that you answer every single question and it's correct, not incorrect, for you to get as many points as possible on your homework. If you have any questions, please contact me.